New reaction today to Pam Bondi's abrupt departure as Attorney General. Her removal comes amid mounting criticism from both Democrats and Republicans alike over her handling of the Jeffrey Epstein files. With less than 2 weeks before her deposition, scheduled April 14th, Democratic lawmakers are calling the decision a calculated move.
I think the crux of this has to do with him trying to move beyond the Epstein files and what's going on, and the fact that he lied. Publicly, he said he didn't know really Jeffrey Epstein. He kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. We know that files within the Epstein files that we've seen that are unredacted.
Let that sink in for a second. The Attorney General of the United States, gone. 11 days before she was supposed to sit down under oath and answer questions about Jeffrey Epstein. Not after the deposition, not after the testimony, before. And the people who have been waiting years, decades, for someone in that building to finally answer for what happened, they watched it happen in real time. This is the story of Pam Bondi's firing, the Epstein deposition that might never happen, and a survivor who went on national television and said exactly what everyone is afraid to say out loud. Stay with me, because this gets darker before it gets clearer. Here's what you need to know. Pam Bondi was serving as Trump's acting attorney general. Under her leadership, the DOJ released a batch of Epstein files that survivors and lawmakers had been demanding for years. Except, according to survivors, journalists, and members of Congress from both parties, the release was a mess. Redacted, incomplete, botched. A congressional subcommittee was investigating. And Bondi, the person who oversaw that release, was scheduled to testify on April 14th, 11 days from the moment she was fired. Democratic Congresswoman Maxwell Frost said it directly. She believes Trump fired Bondi specifically to bury this. And she went further. She said the unredacted Epstein files, the ones they've already seen, prove that Trump lied publicly about his relationship with Epstein. He said he didn't know him. He said he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. According to Frost, the files say otherwise. That's not commentary. That's a sitting member of Congress stating on the record that a president lied and that the files prove it. Now you understand why Bondi is no longer Attorney General. But here's what makes this even worse. Her replacement? Todd Blanche. The man who was Donald Trump's personal defense attorney. The man who, according to Epstein survivor Danielle Binsky, had direct engagement with Ghislaine Maxwell's legal circle. And within days of taking the role, he went on camera and said this.
Yeah. To that end, we have a soundbite we can play from him. And in it, he denies that Bondi's firing had anything to do with the Epstein files. Let's take a listen to that.
I have never heard President Trump say that the Attorney General that anything that happened to her had anything to do with the Epstein files. And so, look, the Epstein files has been a saga that's lasted for the past year. And so I think that to the extent that the Epstein files was a part of the past year of this Justice Department, should not be a part of anything going forward.
So are you worried that Blanche, as a replacement, is going to try to bury any kind of progress that we've seen in this investigation?
I think he's really quick to want to turn the page. I think everything that we're seeing from him has been very politically motivated instead of based in anything legal. And I think that hurts survivors because I heard him call, it's the Epstein saga. He keeps using the word saga. And it's like, we are not living in Star Wars, right? These are survivor lives. And we are trying to get to the bottom of all of this. And so I just hope that he will take this seriously. But I think it's really just a play to turn the page and move on from all of this. But, I don't think America is moving on from this so quickly.
There was that stunning moment, and you were there in the room when Bondi previously testified and refused to face you and the other survivors and apologize for her department's handling of the Epstein files. Given her combative attitude, are you certain she will appear for a second hearing? Do you think that lawmakers can force her to do it?
No, I very much don't think so. I have said from the beginning that I highly doubt that she will show up. But maybe now that she's no longer sitting as acting attorney general, maybe she will show up. I hope that I'm pleasantly surprised, but I don't have a great amount of faith, to be honest.
Well, it'd certainly be something we'd all be very curious to hear. But as you know, it has been over 2 months since the DOJ released a batch of the Epstein files. Besides, Danielle, the high-profile arrests of Ghislaine Maxwell and former Prince Andrew, prosecutors have not brought any new charges from those documents. So what does justice look like to you? Does it end with more arrests?
Definitely more arrests. You know, there are so many layers of co-conspirators in the story. We hope that they're held to account for their crimes, right? So that looks different for every layer. I think we're really hopeful about, we're already seeing so many people step down from positions of leadership, and that has been great to see across the board. But I think like changing names of scholarships, making sure that there are no statues honoring the people who, in this country have possessed power in the wrong way, So I think, we are hopeful that we will pursue more investigations and hope that the DOJ does come around to start those investigations.
He called it a saga. A saga. These are real people. These are women who were trafficked, abused, and then ignored by every institution that was supposed to protect them. And the new Attorney General of the United States went on camera and called their fight for justice a saga. Danielle Binsky heard that. And she said something that I think every single person watching this needs to hear. She said, "We are not living in Star Wars. These are survivor lives." She's right. And it gets worse. Todd Blanche also went on record saying the Epstein files were not mishandled. Not mishandled. The same files that Bondi herself, in a previous hearing in the same room as survivors, apologized for her department's handling of. She admitted it was mishandled. And now her replacement is saying it wasn't. These two men cannot both be telling the truth. One of them is lying. And the survivors, the people who actually lived through what those files describe, they know which one it is. Now, let's talk about what happens next, because here's where things get complicated. Lawmakers, including Republican Nancy Mace, say the subpoena still stands. Bondi is no longer Attorney General, but she is still a private individual with direct personal knowledge of what happened inside that department. And under the panel's subpoena, she is legally obligated to appear. They say she cannot escape this by getting fired. But Danielle Binsky, who was in the room the last time Bondi testified, doesn't believe she's coming. She said it plainly. She has said from the beginning she doesn't think Bondi will show up. The last time Bondi was in front of survivors, she couldn't even look at them. She refused to face them. She apologized and then left. Now she's been removed from her post days before she'd have to face them again, and the new Attorney General is already rewriting the history of what happened. This is the pattern. Delay. Deflect. Remove. Replace. Deny. And the people who suffered, they're still waiting. Here's what we know, not as commentary, but as confirmed fact. 1. Pam Bondi was fired 11 days before her scheduled Epstein deposition. 2. Congressional investigators say the subpoena still stands and she is legally required to appear regardless. 3. Democratic lawmakers say unredacted files directly contradict Trump's public claims about Epstein. 4. The new Attorney General called survivors' fight for justice a saga and denied the files were mishandled, directly contradicting Bondi's own prior admission. 5. No new arrests have been made from the files released 2 months ago. Here's what survivors are saying right now. They're not moving on. America's not moving on. And the subpoena doesn't care who's Attorney General. April 14th is coming. And either Pam Bondi shows up or she becomes the story. If you made it this far, you already know this story isn't over. Drop a comment. Tell me what you think happens on April 14th. Does she show up? Or does this get buried again? Subscribe if you want to be here when we find out. because we're going to cover every single development.